Does anybody know what OSHA is? Does anybody remember? Dan?
Is it occupational safety health assessments?
Nope. Administration.
Oh.
So close. Good job, though. But yes, we covered OSHA yesterday, and OSHA is just what keeps us safe on the job site. We work in a lab, so we don't have to worry about a job site, though. All right, but today we're going to work on framing. Does anybody know what framing is? Samo?
Essentially, it's the structure of your house or the building that is being worked on.
That's perfect. That's exactly right. So when we look at framing, we have a lot of vocabulary. So the first bit of vocabulary is a joist. So I know I already have the definition up there, but can someone tell me what a joist is?
Larger boards that you use to frame your floor or your ceiling
Good
and
job.
more, depending
Yep.
on.
Exactly that. All right, so our next vocab is studs.
They're vertical.
Yes, they are vertical, correct. So we're going to cover this later, but does anybody know how far apart you space your studs in a frame? Dan?
Is it 16 on center?
Yes, it is 16 on center. Does anybody know why we space them that far apart? No?
Is it fit with a 4-foot wide sheet of plywood?
Yes and no. There's a lot of factors to it. We're going to cover that later, but I like you that you're already thinking about it. The next thing we're going to cover is headers. Anybody?
It's the top part of an opening.
Yes, it is actually. That's perfectly correct. All right, sills. Anybody know what a sill is? Samo?
I believe it's specifically the bottom part of like the frame for a window.
Yes, exactly that. Does anybody know the other part of a sill? There is another part.
Is there like a horizontal and a vertical one?
No. So a sill is any part that we cover from that can let in a draft. So does anybody know what a draft is when it comes to weather? TJ? Wind. Good job. So when we're building a frame, we like to put this thing on the bottom. It's called sill seal. This allows no draft through the bottom of the frame. And we put that in the form of caulk on the bottom of our windows. And finally, rafters. Samo?
Are those what they're for the roof, but are they what the shingles are like attached to, or shingles or anything on top of the house?
Yes, so the rafters are the wooden structure, much like frames, that you attach the sheeting to that you then attach the shingles to. All right, so now we're going to talk a couple things about types of framing. Can anybody, so I have them identified here, but can you match the types of framing to the 4 types that we have here? Dan, would you like to take the first one? We'll start with the left picture over there.
The farthest to the left?
Yep.
That's wood, yeah?
Yes, that is wood. All right, TJ, could you tell me which one the middle one is?
Concrete.
Concrete, good job. And Samo, what is this one here on the right?
I want to say that well, steel or composite. I'm leaning towards composite almost.
That's actually steel.
It is steel.
Yep. So does anybody know why we use different types of materials when it comes to framing? Carter?
Different weather and living conditions.
Yeah. So where at would we find concrete framing? Carter?
Stadium.
Stadium? TJ, do you have another example?
Like any place where you have a lot of load, like there's a lot of weight.
Yeah, that's a great point. Dan, you raised your hand. Do you have another example?
Kind of like what TJ said, parking garage is what comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly. As you can see here in this picture, that does resemble a parking garage. And like TJ said, it's exactly for the point of load bearing. So can someone say why we might use wood as a frame? Dick?
It's cheaper than steel and concrete.
Correct, that's exactly the reason. If you make it correctly, it can be just as durable as concrete or steel can, but it also has that cost part to it as well. And why would we use steel or composite for our framing?
Structure.
Structure.
It's
So
stronger than wood.
yeah, so it actually is a combination of both the wood and the concrete. So it adds structure, it adds soundness to the building, but it's also a lot cheaper than concrete would be in the sense of how cheap wood is.
Vertical bit under and above the window is the gap.
Yep. These portions right here?
Yep.
Yep, perfect. Where would the header be?
That'd be 2.
Where is that at?
That's a The top part of the window.
This part up here?
Yep.
All right, perfect. And where would the plate be?
The very bottom, number 6.
Very bottom, so 6 down here.
Yep.
And the beam?
Very
Very top. All right, so now we have a good understanding of how a frame goes together and where those pieces go at, right? All righty. All right, so now we're going to talk some knowledge about framing. So like we talked earlier, does anybody remember how far apart studs need to be in a frame?
16 and a half.
16 to center.
Mm.
So 16 inches. So, you guys, what are some common tools? Did you have a question?
Yeah, why do we always say like on center? Why does it have to be centered and not just on the edge of the stud?
So, when you do on center, that means the center of the stud, which is where you're going to put your nails at. And then it also makes it a perfect distance between each stud if you always go to center of each stud.
Oh, so it's consistent, so one guy doesn't do it on one end and the other.
Yep.
Okay.
Because then it'll change the distance
Got
between
it.
each stud if you continue to do it different throughout the entire frame.
Got it.
You guys have a question back there?
No.
No? All right. So, does anybody know the common tools used to build a frame? Samo?
Hammer and nails.
Hammer and nails? Dan, do you have any more tools?
Yeah, nail gun.
Nail gun? Carter?
Tape.
Tape? What kind of tape?
Measure.
Measuring tape? TJ? you-
Saw.
Saw? Dan?
Speed square.
Speed square?
Chocolate.
Chalk line? All right.
Ooh, that's a good one.
All right. Lastly, what safety precautions do we need to work when using framing tools? These are the same safety precautions that we normally talk about when we enter the lab. Carter?
Would it be safety glasses, helmet?
Safety glasses, helmet, so PPE.
I was going off the PPE, just hard-toe boots and maybe long pants.
Yep. Anybody else? Samo?
Common sense.
Common sense, that's a great one. Nick, did you have something?
And just communication with the people you're working with, so you
Yeah.
don't run into them.
Yeah. So on a work site, you know where we would start. Carter?
The bottom.
The bottom, which is known as, we know the technical
Plate.
term. Yes. From there, what would we do next? Nick?
Do your studs,
Studs? And how far do we place our studs apart from each other?
16 on center, unless there's a door or a window or something.
Correct. Dan?
Are we starting with this laying down or standing up?
You can start either way, but I'm gonna ask you this. How would you put the top on, or easily, if it was standing up?
I don't know.
So, we're gonna use the ability of building it on the ground and then standing up once it's finished. So, once we have our studs in place, what are we gonna go through and work on next? Dan?
The header?
The header? So that would be,
The beam?
yep, either works, because this is technically also a header. So, once we have our header on, we have our frame technically done, but now we want to add features like a window or a door. What would we have to do next after that?
Cut it.
Cut it. Well, we don't necessarily have anything to cut because they wouldn't be there yet. Nick?
You would put in like your half joists and your king studs on the sides.
Yep, exactly that. So, like he said, our king studs, these are studs that aren't actually to size with the rest of our frame. And then our half joists are these blocks here that fill in the gap to still support the weight of a window or a door or the load bearing of the ceiling. So after we did that, what would we do? After we stand it up? Well, we didn't quite put our sill in yet for our window or our headers in yet, so we might need to go back and do those before we put it up. But once those are done, is there anything else that we talked about throughout so far that we need to include? What about the thing on the ground that we need to include so that, for weather?
Sill seal.
Sill seal or
Treated lumber.
treated lumber, so that would be already included when we make our plate. There's one other thing that we need to use.
Caulk.
Yep, caulk. Once we have all that laid down, then we can stand our wall up, and you have the first wall of your frame of your house done.